interesting anecdote there, right? Between Swami Vivekananda and the conversation that Jamshetji Tata had with Swami Vivekananda aboard a ship.
I don't specifically know about that conversation, but they met each other and were inspired by each other. I know that. So over the years, the trusts have focused on either creating institutions that serve the common good, like cancer hospitals, etc., and institutions of learning, some international and some domestic, and causes which were said to be for the common good. What is refreshing is that the holding company for the whole Tata Group, which Jamshetji Tata set up, that 66%, or at that time more, 85% of its income and dividend outflow became income to the trusts for the common good of the Indian citizen and foreign causes.
But as you rightly said, at that time there was no need, there was no mandate. Today we have CSR, much abused as it is a phrase. But what do you think went through the minds of the founders when they set this up, and especially transferring their value in Tata Sons to the trusts?
Well, I think it was a different view of ownership. Mr. JRD Tata often used to refer to Tatas as being the trustees of the people. The Tata family could have become tremendously wealthy by having distributorships, partnerships, etc. in the businesses. But most of the businesses, whether it was steel, whether it was power, or institutions, were set up as institutions for the country. So Jamshetji Tata could just as well have dedicated Tata Steel to the nation or dedicated Tata Power to the nation. They belong to the shareholders and to the people. Personal ownership and personal wealth happened when it happened, but was never the criteria for these companies to be established. So it was natural that he did leave his ownership to his two sons, and then his two sons, who had no children, left them in charitable trusts as beneficiaries of the companies that they held. So it was a refreshing change that gave way to ownership in an industry not being for the beneficial interest of A or B or C, but for the better good of humanity.
So if you look at the trusts today, they span a wide range of sectors. And there's a certain stress that you've laid on technology being a great intervention in some of the applications. Where do you believe the transformation of the trusts actually began, and why?
Well, if you look at India through the years, the needs of India have changed. We had famines, food famines in the British times.
Yeah.
We don't have famines any longer. We had a majority of the people living in the rural areas. Today there's a mass migration to the urban areas, giving finally an important issue of creating an important issue of urban poverty and hardships that didn't exist before. The creation of jobs in industrial organizations. Today, automation and differences in terms of value chains, etc., make human jobs less important than machine jobs in many companies. So the needs of the nation have changed. Food shortages continue to exist in pockets. water shortage is something that never existed in the past, but is an issue today. A much larger population and creating jobs and knowledge. These are all issues that are issues of the changing times. For the Trust to continue to do what they did at the turn of the century would be to be sitting in the twilight thinking that the issues of the country were the same. And to me, that would have been a disappointment. So I think the trusts have gone through and are going through a transformation that, to use short term, is making the trusts relevant today. If we had not done that, they would have become irrelevant and creator of edifices that stood out as evidence of what the trust did, but did not make a contribution to the country.
While I completely agree about the relevance of the trust, the one thing that a lot of people talk about is the Tata culture, the Tata way of life. If you work for the Tatas, on the one hand, it's almost as we are working for a family. On the other, it's almost as if you're part of a legacy. How have successive leaders, you, before you, JRD, how have you managed to retain that Tata culture in times which are sadly materialistic, competitive? How have you maintained that culture?
First of all, that culture becomes embodied in the DNA of an organization. It's set off by the early leaders, the founder in our case, who never was in need of wealth because he had it all, but it wasn't what drove him. Success of giving India its own independence in steel or power or the hospitality area were what gave him the pride that he had made India self-sufficient. He didn't at that time look at the companies as being his, but belonging to the country. Somehow that prevailed through the years, through his sons, and then through JRD Tata for 50 years or so, where JRD would stand in a line rather than jump a queue.
Yeah.
Where he would give way to a customer first and not him. And that humility, I think, became embodied in what all the leaders of Tata companies had done. And we should protect that ferociously.